Welcome everybody to this new broadcast of OndaLunga, Long Wave, the current affairs program of Funambole Radio Attive. Today marks the International Day on Violence Against Women. Therefore, we decided to make this particular broadcast a bit special for you. In fact, this will be the first broadcast by OndaLunga in English with Italian subtitles. And we have a very, very special guest today, Amie FerrisRotman, who is the global editor of the Fuller Project, which is a consortium of women investigative journalists. Welcome, Amie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Amie, all too often women journalists who report on violence, corruption, human rights violations are themselves victims of harassment, intimidation, torture, and violence. According to Reporters Without Borders, in 2020 alone, 40 journalists were killed, 250 are imprisoned as we speak, men and women naturally. On this particular day, I would like to commemorate colleagues who have died in action, such as Ilaria Alpi, Maria Grazia Cutuli, Anna Palitkovskaya, Mary Colvin, Daphne Caruana Galicia, and Victoria Marinova, and many others who have paid with their lives their passion and commitment to their job. And together with them, of course, we remember all the reporters who have been or are, as we speak, injured, imprisoned, tortured, persecuted because of their activities. Last week, we interviewed Marilu Mastrogiovanni, who is an intrepid Italian journalist and the organizer of the Forum on Mediterranean Women Journalists. Today, we're going to get a different perspective from the other side of the Atlantic, because the Fuller Project is based in Washington, D.C., in the United States, and you are based in London. We know, Amie, that you are a prize winner reporter. You have been the Moscow correspondent for the Washington Post. You have reported from more than 15 countries. And in your 15-year career, you have been exposing injustices and raising an awareness on underreported stories surrounding women and their communities. Amie,
yes.
With this star-studded career, can you please tell us more about the Fuller Project and what brought you to the project?
Most certainly. So the Fuller Project was established 5 years ago in Istanbul by a group of female war correspondents who got together and realized that there was not dedicated reporting on issues that impact women that was being disseminated or being produced for major news outlets around the world. So that is the kernel of the idea. That's how the Fuller Project started. It has since evolved. It's a non-profit global newsroom now. We have reporters scattered all over the globe. We have a permanent Asia correspondent, a permanent Africa correspondent. We have partnerships with Kenya's Daily Nation group, as well as Foreign Policy magazine. And we produce about 2 global features every month. We produce American stories, of course, as well. And we produce hard-hitting, often investigative, accountability-driven journalism about issues that impact women. And that's across the breadth of the globe. Yeah.
Thank you. Amie, you have reported extensively on violence against women. In 2020, you received the Human Rights Press Awards for your investigation into sexual violence perpetrated against ethnic Kazakh women by Chinese authorities. The year before, in 2019, your 2018 series on Russians' discrimination of domestic violence laws that were abolished also received acclaim and awards. And the list of your awards can go on and on and on. But I would like you to tell us something about a story that you reported about that in your view has had the effect of changing policies and attitudes on violence against women and therefore improved women's conditions.
Yes, well, when I was living in Russia, reporting for the Washington Post, as their Moscow correspondent, Russia decriminalized some parts of domestic violence. It was an incredibly shocking law which was passed 3 years ago. And what it did is it softened domestic violence criminalization. So what was allowed were partners were allowed to beat up women or their partners, but then almost all of the cases they are women, legally, as long as it didn't do lasting damage, which is a very kind of quite cruel and very specific way of saying, yeah, if you didn't get your skull smashed in or get a concussion or break a bone, then it's okay. So you're allowed to have stitches, you're allowed to have your hair pulled out, you're allowed to get bruised. And what I started reporting on were the kind of the groups of women who were going around Russia, and often actually out of the usual urban settings of Moscow and St. Petersburg, the major metropolises. And they were women who were going around as Me Too activists, if you will. And they were trying to document the violence that was being perpetrated against women and trying to bring those who had committed it to justice, to account, which in Russia is very well, rarely takes place anyway, regardless of this new law. And I followed a group of activists in Ufa, which is in the middle of the Urals, in the middle of Russia. And they were trying, and as a result, I think perhaps of my reporting, or my reporting certainly contributed, they successfully managed to campaign on behalf of a female policewoman who said she was gang raped by 2 of her colleagues. Rape is the least, it's the least least prosecuted crime in all of Russia. It's also, I think, the second least reported crime. So this is an incredibly underreported issue, something which the authorities have long not taken seriously. This young woman, she was 23 at the time, said she was gang raped, and the 2 men were immediately arrested. However, then they were released. But because of this group of activists who were going around trying to raise awareness about Me Too, trying to raise awareness about the blame culture and exactly what happens to women in society, they actually managed to draw attention to this case. And we saw this quite large, Russian city of 500,000 basically divided down the middle to do with opinion, which is incredibly rare, because usually with a rape case or a lot of violence which is perpetrated against women, people do not take the woman's point of view seriously or their side. But in this case, we did see it, and the men were actually, the 2 men, her colleagues, were actually sentenced to prison for raping her, which is virtually, I mean, this very rarely happens when it involves the police force. It never happens. This was unprecedented. So we did see that happening, and perhaps my reporting contributed to that. I mean, I shone a light on what they were doing in this city, and the Kremlin came out and actually talked about the case for the first time after my report. And I think the international attention that was given to this situation because of my report created a lot of worthwhile discussion. There was local media as well, which followed up on my reporting and corroborated it.
Well done, Amie. And you are speaking of women in movement in their advocacy, and also your own movement following these women. I would imagine that the restrictions on movement placed because of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, are hampering the kind of investigative reporting that you are doing in general, and also hampering contact with women who are locked at home, possibly with a violent partner. Could you tell us what's going on at the moment for you?
Absolutely. Yes, so I personally am sitting in London, where I'm commissioning stories from around the globe about the impacts of COVID-19 on women, and the stories I'm seeing are fascinating and incredibly harrowing, but they do have a similarity, which is that that life is indeed, it's getting worse for women around the globe because of COVID-19, and it's getting worse especially for women who are in already vulnerable situations, such as a domestic violence situation, such as a trafficking situation, women who are already being exploited as well, who've been forced into some form of prostitution. We are seeing this get worse across the globe, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in India, where child marriage has been skyrocketing, whether it's in Afghanistan, where child marriage has also been skyrocketing as girls get pregnant during this pandemic more than they did before. That is for various reasons, because access to contraceptives has been reduced in the pandemic. It's also to do with rates of violence, sexual assault, rape has also increased. And as you mentioned, women are literally locked down with their abusers. This is something we're seeing in the United Kingdom, unfortunately as well. I mean, we're seeing it absolutely everywhere, which is women who were already in vulnerable situations or were unable to seek support. Their access to these support systems has been curtailed as well, because they're at home, their partner who is abusive or potentially abusive is monitoring them, so they can't make the phone calls to the hotlines they need. They can't go on the internet to look at what sort of resources are available to them. So we're seeing this squeezing happening, and that really is happening across the board, affecting women of all ages, all classes, all races, and across society. And it is deeply disturbing.
And Italy, of course, is no exception. But moving now to a happier topic, you are, among other things, the founder of the Sahel project in Afghanistan. Can you tell us something about it? How you are empowering women, Afghan women, by giving them access to careers in journalism?
Sure. So Sahar Speaks was founded by me 5 years ago, after I was a journalism fellow at Stanford University, part of their John S. Knight Journalism Fellowship. That's where the kernel of the idea started, and I received funding and put it into action in 2015. To date, we've trained 23 Afghan female journalists. We've trained them in how to report for a foreign audience, also in ethics, also in photography and video, and some safety as well. And yeah, we've had great successes. What it stemmed from, the need for this, was when I set Sahar Speaks up, there was not a single Afghan woman working for any of the international media outlets in Afghanistan, which I still find incredible, incredibly hypocritical, especially considering the international mission in Afghanistan, which we all our countries, Italy included, participated in, which was providing military support, but also providing lots of funding and money and resources towards empowering Afghan women, to helping them get better lives in a country which had been ravaged by war and also had the Taliban, which was notoriously restrictive over women's lives. And so I found it very hypocritical that there was not a single Afghan woman represented in the international press. What we did is we got a group of incredibly talented Afghan female journalists, and after training and mentoring, which is incredibly important as well, pairing them with an experienced foreign correspondent, a woman who they could speak to and have a relationship with and talk about their stories with, they were then published in the Huffington Post and the Guardian. And our alumni have gone on to achieve great successes. The New York Times hired one of our alumni, she became Zara Nader. She became the first Afghan woman to ever work for the New York Times, which is great. She's since moved on and went to Canada, where she's pursuing a PhD. And her position was filled by another Afghan woman. So that's like proper success there, substantive change. The Agence France Presse also hired one of our alumni recently as a videographer. So yeah, so the landscape has changed in Afghanistan, the media landscape, thanks to the program.
Is it going to be the gold standard, or are you going to replicate this successful experience elsewhere?
Maybe one day. Yes, maybe one day we can replicate it elsewhere. I mean, what I realized when I was pursuing Soccer Speaks and managing it is every country needs female journalists and stories about women and stories that, issues that impact women highlighted and focused on. And but in other countries, we have other issues to do with equal pay, equal representation, harassment. But yes, perhaps it can be replicated. I would like to. There are no plans. There are no concrete plans to replicate it, but it's certainly something which is always brewing in my mind. And there's definitely interest.
I wish you all the luck and the best of luck in this pursuit and in all other pursuits that you have in mind. And I thank you very, very much, Amie. Goodbye.
Thank you, Loretta. Goodbye.
Goodbye.